everybody, it's Hannah and I'm here with my labor and delivery story for my first child. And I wanted to film this and share it with you all just because I love looking at labor and delivery stories or listening to labor and delivery stories. I find that, kind of filling my mind and prepping with positivity, prepping with positive stories of all different experiences was really helpful for me to kind of prepare for my future labors. And so I wanted to throw another positive story out there on the internet. And also, for my own documentation, I'm 35 weeks pregnant with my second child. And I want to remember all these details before I start meshing the story. So with my second kid. So my first son is going to be 2 next week. And again, I'm 35 weeks pregnant, so they should be just about 2 years apart. First and second, and 2 boys. So again, the labor and delivery story of my first son. If you wanted to know up front, if you're looking for certain types of stories, I did have a vaginal delivery with no epidural or pain medication. Although I was open to having an epidural and or medication depending on what was the best solution, and I'll talk more about that later. So again, if you're curious, that's the kind of delivery I had, and but with some open-mindedness, which I think really helped with my particular situation. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and get started. I have my little notebook here just to help remind me of a few details as we get rocking and rolling here. So labor for me started about a week before my due date, just a little over a week before my due date on a Sunday. And it started with really mild contractions. I knew they were different than Braxton Hicks because I had had Braxton Hicks for quite a while in my pregnancy thus far, and this that to me felt like tightening and just like my stomach just felt uncomfortable and tight, and I could lay down on my side and drink some water and it would get better. But again, it just kind of felt more overall tight and uncomfortable, versus this felt more like a period cramp. Just to get a very different quality of feeling. So I knew this was different, but they were very mild. Just enough where I was like, okay, this is different, this is weird, and we started timing them. I don't remember how far apart they were, but they were pretty regular and fairly close, which kind of like, oh my gosh, is this it? So we texted my doula, and my doula said, try taking a warm bath or a shower and, just kind of see where that leaves you. And so I took a shower, and they did dissipate quite a bit. They felt much better afterwards. I don't remember whether they went away completely or whether they just calmed down quite a bit. But either way, I, went to sleep that night, woke up the next morning, felt fine, went to work. And basically throughout that entire week, I had contractions, every single day. They progressed in intensity from that Sunday on, just little by little. And that Friday, I had a doctor's appointment, and so this at this point it was 39 plus weeks, and 39 and 4 or whatever. And I remember talking to my my OB, and I was like, I really feel like it's happening, and my staff at work kind of didn't think I'd come back from that appointment. I left work and went to the doctor's appointment, and we kind of thought that they would end up keeping me. But they checked my cervix, and that was the first time I had been checked, and I was a centimeter dilated. So clearly they didn't keep me. And they sent me home, and I, just went through the weekend. I had been walking a lot that week. I was getting anxious to get him out, and so I walked a lot that week. Kind of did all the things that you can supposedly do to kind of spur things on. But got through the weekend basically, and then Sunday we had taken a really long walk, and it was kind of the same thing. It was getting a little bit more intense, but you know, I was kind of like, okay, I'm probably going to work tomorrow. So then I went over to my friend's house at like 3 or 4 p.m. on that Sunday after the long walk to get her birth ball, because it was just a little bit of a better size, more comfortable size than mine. And so I could bounce a little, sit on the ball, bounce a little, and do some comfortable movements that way. I've been doing that. I'm a physical therapist, and I had been using the ball all week at work, but in terms of at home, I didn't have one, so I borrowed one from her. At that point, I remember telling her, you know, things are picking up a little bit. They're getting a little more intense. I'm getting a little more uncomfortable, but it's still perfectly tolerable. So at that point, we got home, and my mama was actually waiting for us at the house. She had some ice cream and some dinner for us, which was really sweet. And so I bounced on the ball for a little bit, and my husband got dinner ready, and she joined us for dinner. And basically over the course of dinner, we started timing things, because I was like, I'm uncomfortable. This is definitely more intense, and I think this might be it. So, you know, I think I could still talk through things, but I think I had to kind of like close my eyes and breathe and like focus a little bit. I wasn't able to easily talk through them. And so finally I had been texting my doula and, said like, okay, things are really picking up. She's like, all right, let's do another shower or bath and see how you do. So my mama left us with the ice cream, and I took a shower, and things were still progressing, not easing up after the shower. So I, let things progress a little bit more, and then, texted her and was like, yeah, this is definitely progressing. And she said, okay, really sounds like this is it. And unfortunately, our doula that we had met with and had been chatting with throughout this whole process had a once a year national speaking engagement the next day, and couldn't be there for the birth, which is like literally any other day of the year. This would have been fine. So that was a bummer, but I did find my doula through our hospital, and which is wonderful. Helped with expense, helped with just finding a good doula, and they worked well with the nursing staff, which is really cool. And so she said, another doula with our program can be there, and we'll meet you at the hospital if you'd like. So I said, yeah, that'd be great. And so she said she'd offered to fill her in on the plan and kind of what our goals were. And so this other doula was going to meet us at the hospital. So throughout this whole time, I had been watching a lot of New Girl, trying to distract myself, making sure everything was ready to go, our bags were packed, all that jazz, and I had made a list of last minute stuff for my husband to kind of gather. So he was making sure everything was ready. He was also using, we have like a massage ball that's like rolly on one side and kind of like a grip, there's a grip on the other side. So he was massaging my back. I was just breathing through things, started using hands and knees a lot, and kind of rocking, and just really breathing through everything, like just really deep breaths, closing my eyes, breathing through. So it was definitely at that point where I couldn't talk through them. I was just having to breathe through them and focus. And we had a friend probably around like 9:30 maybe come pick up our dog. And I remember having to stop conversation when she got there, by the time she was there. So we finished gathering things, tried to labor at home as much as possible. Knowing it was my first, I wanted to labor at home as much as I could. And so we did for quite a while. And we finally left for the hospital around 11. And at that point, Andy pulled the car around, and I, definitely had to stop walking, stop everything I was doing when I had a contraction. I liked a lot of like either hands and knees or like bracing, arms forward, bracing myself on stuff. That was really comfortable, like helped with me, with that labor. And so we got in the car. The car ride there was my least favorite part of the whole thing, of the whole process, I think. Because by then I was super uncomfortable, and you had to lean back in my husband's car, like it's just the seats aren't super upright, and that was a really uncomfortable position for me to be stuck in and not be able to move out of during contractions. And also just like any bumps you hit are awful. And I should also mention, for me, timing, because we had been timing the contractions the whole thing, timing got really real really fast. Like it was, by the time I left from the hospital, they were between 2 and 5 minutes apart. And I remember my sister-in-law was like, am I gonna have to come deliver a baby at your house? Like, what, go to the hospital. But my water hadn't broken. I was still, you know, I was like, this is tolerable, so I want to try to get through it if I can. You know, I felt like if I could tolerate it, like I wanted to wait till the intensity was up there. And really, they had kind of, timing wise, it was a little confusing for us because it started out so close together. I think from that, like as soon as we started timing them, it was 5 minutes, you know, or 5 to 7. So our hospital has the 5-1-1 rule. So 5 minutes apart, lasting for a minute for an hour. We hit that really quickly in the process, but again, the intensity when we hit that was so low that I was like, I'm not going to the hospital right now. They're going to send me home. Especially with my first baby, you know, making a couple assumptions there. But so by the time we got to the hospital, times were very close together. The contractions were very close together. And so when we got into triage, they checked me and I was, I believe, 4 centimeters, and maybe 80% effaced. I was pretty far in terms of being effaced, or doing pretty well on that. And so they were like, yeah, we're definitely going to keep you. And at that point, our doula got there, our new doula. And we kind of filled her in on our plan and goals, which, so getting back to what I talked about at the beginning, our goal was to have a labor or delivery without an epidural if possible, but I was open to one. And basically my thought process there was whatever helps my body along the most. So if it's most efficient and feels the best, not feels the best, but if my body's really working with itself and helping itself progress, if that makes sense, if I can change positions and you know, everything's kind of moving along, then I wanted to try to not have an epidural. But if my body was getting so tense from the pain that it seemed like it was kind of stalling things, or like almost like my body was fighting itself, I was perfectly fine to have an epidural. A couple other things that made me, again, ideally not want one if possible. You know, I had heard that from our labor and delivery class that sometimes babies are a little more alert when there's no epidural on board, just because of the lack of medication. Certainly you can move around more during labor, which that ideal really appealed to me. And, you know, I don't know if that, you know, in terms of affecting tearing or anything, but I just figured if I could be in whatever position was most comfortable, that would be most ideal. So I liked that idea. I liked being able to get up and move around sooner afterwards. And I had had a couple people that I knew who had had side effects from epidurals. So even though I knew that the incidence rate was really low for those things, I know a lot of people who've had really positive epidural experiences. You know, there was just enough of that, like, that makes me a little nervous in my mind, where still the needle was more scary to me than the pain. So as long as that was true, I was going to try without. So that's kind of what our driving forces or driving factors were there. But again, I think I had an open mind, and I'm really glad I did, because I think having an open mind, gave me mentally a little bit of an out. It's like, okay, I think I can take the pain right now, but if I can't, that's always an option. And for me, that was helpful. You know, I think also just being flexible. There was one point, which I'll get into in a minute, where things started to looking like they were taking a more, like a not so good turn, and I think having a slightly flexible mindset was helpful when we were kind of facing that. So anyways, talked to my doula about the plan, you know, how involved my husband was going to be and how hands-on he was going to be, which is basically we wanted him to do as much of the comforting and massage and all that is possible. But, you know, our thought, and one of the reasons we got a doula, is because we're like, you know, we don't know that we'll think of the right, like think of helpful positions or think of helpful techniques, even though we took classes, just because this is our first time. And I think that was definitely the case. So we went to our room after triage, and at that point, they might have checked me one more time and, you know, monitored the baby. And then I got in the shower just for you know, the hot water and all that jazz. And so I got in the shower. That was really, really helpful for me. I loved it. I could get in that, like they had a bar on the shower where I could kind of get in that braced position that felt really good. My husband was still working on my back. My doula had some oils that she would kind of like, you know, use in front of my nose that were calming. I could really focus in on my breath still. It was getting a lot more uncomfortable, don't get me wrong. But I could still get through it. So at some point, I got out of the shower really because they made me. They had to check, you know, monitor the baby again, check my vitals, all that jazz. So they got me on the bed. I think I was in that partially reclined position, which I did not like. So I remember really feeling it at that point. And they checked me, and I believe I was 5 or 6 centimeters more face. And they were just saying, like, things were moving pretty fast for me being a first-time mom. So, but my water hadn't broken yet. Just side note. My water still hadn't broken. And we were discussing at the point, I was in a tub room, and I really wanted to try the tub. And it was getting intense to the point where I was kind of starting to think about the epidural as an option, but I was like, I don't want to get an epidural when I'm in a tub room and I haven't tried the tub yet. I'd really prefer to do that. They were a little nervous about putting me in the tub because of how far along I was, but because my water hadn't broken yet, and I was first time mom, they decided to go ahead and let me, you know, put the mobile monitor on me, and they let me go in the tub, which was good, because again, at that point, I was getting pretty uncomfortable. Having a harder time breathing, and I had tried, I think, hands and knees over the ball. I had tried like different positions in the bed, and, you know, it just wasn't as comfortable. So we wanted to try the tub, given that I was more uncomfortable. My doula was very respectful, but kind of advocated for that, and I was like, can we put the mobile monitor on her? Can we try it? So we did. So we got in the tub. You know, it takes a minute to fill it up, a good while to fill it up, because they're pretty big. And I was so uncomfortable at that point. I don't really feel like the tub helped with the pain, honestly. At that point, I think, but it was helpful for me to have another thing to do, like another step. Like, okay, we're going to do this, and then we'll talk about the epidural, then we'll talk about, you know, other things. At that point, I remember I was starting to feel more pressure. I think I started feeling a little bit of pressure in the shower. But it wasn't like, oh my gosh, I have to go to the bathroom right now. You know, it was just like, I could tell when they kept asking, do you feel like you have to poop? Do you feel like you're feeling any pressure yet? I could tell I was getting there, in the shower. And in the tub, it was definitely starting to progress. And at that point, I lost my mucus plug in the tub. My husband saw it and was like, because I don't think I didn't notice that I lost it, but he did. And I'm just checking my notes here. But yeah, I was starting to feel the pressure at that point, and I think it got to the point where they had to check me again. Anyways, monitor the baby. Or check my vitals or whatever they had to do that was ideally required me getting out of the tub. So because I wasn't getting a ton of relief and we kind of wanted to see where I was at, and I had lost my mucus plug, we decided I was going to get out of the tub. Somewhere around this point, either when I was in the tub or when I got onto the bed again, they put oxygen on me. And this part is all like a little more blurry in my mind. But they put oxygen on me. Later, a nurse told me that they had a lot of people looking at my monitor at that point. And so I guess the baby was having some decelerations in his heart rate, which I wasn't completely aware of what was going on at the time. I just knew that they were putting the oxygen on me, that they were a little concerned, and for a minute I thought I was going to have an emergency C-section. Luckily I didn't, and I think finally I was like, I can't lay on my back in that reclined position anymore, I cannot do it. And I finally laid on my side, I remember it was my right side for some reason, and once I turned on my side, I felt like it felt better. That position felt better to me, and my the vitals got a little bit better. They were less concerned, so that was good. And at that point I was like, I have to start pushing. The pressure was really coming on. And I remember one of the nurses saying, okay, there's a bulging sac, be careful, to one of the other nurses. And then my water broke, and when I say broke, it was really more like it exploded. I mean, this is, you know, the TMI point, I mean, but it was, you know, like a, when you think of like Nickelodeon slime cannons, it like, where it was like, you know, all the fluid, it was crazy. And I just never heard of that happening. So it was like really bizarre. But my water broke, and unfortunately all over one of my favorite nurses, who was wonderful. So she went and changed. And at this point, I mean, pretty much that happened. And I think they had been talking about breaking my water, before it happened, cause I had the bulging sac. But they didn't have to. So at this point things were really moving. I was 7 or 8 centimeters. I, you know, remember being like, okay, I'm in transition. This is terrible. I'm like, and terribly painful. Start thinking about that I can't do it kind of thing. Like there's no way, or I can't do this for very long, I think was my thought process. Like if the baby's like here, I can do it. If the baby's going to be here in 2 hours, you know, or 2 to 4 hours, I don't know if I can. So I asked about an epidural, and so what would that look like, I think is the way I phrased it. And one of the nurses said, well, the way things are looking, how far along you are, basically it would take, you know, this long for the anesthesiologist to get up here, and then to get the epidural, and this long, much longer to have relief from it. The baby might be here by then. So at that point I was like, no, I'm not gonna have an epidural and then not even have the benefit of the epidural. So I'm gonna see how this goes. And so at this point I, you know, was getting to the point where I was like, I need to push. So I must have progressed to where it was 10 at that point, or like really close. Because at one point they let me start pushing. So that whole timeline with thinking about the epidural and getting out and the water breaking was kind of, basically that was me going through transition. So that 7 to 8 centimeters and then progressing to 10. That was that timeline. So, and if you remember, like I got out of the shower, maybe I didn't say that, but I got out of the shower at like 2:30, 3:30 at the latest, somewhere in that range. And my son was born at 4:30. So this was all pretty quick, you know, that I got in the tub, all that. So finally on my side, the nurses were like, okay, let's do some practice pushes. I started, I think they wanted to slow me down so the doctor could get in. And finally the doctor came in, and I started pushing. Definitely was saying the things like, I can't do it, like I'm stupid, why did I do this? Kind of all that stuff. You know, and they're really encouraging and positive. I remember them wanting, like, they wanted me to hold my legs up like this, and my hands were so sweaty. They were like, hold your legs, and I'm like, I'm trying so hard, and it just wasn't working. So Andy and my doula were holding my legs, and I was pushing, and definitely the ring of fire is real, guys. But it felt somewhat relieving to push at that point. Like, okay, I need to do this. This feels better than that transition right before. That was awful. So pushing, I pushed for 30 minutes, and doctor did give me some perineal massage in between, which was really uncomfortable because that was during my break, basically. But it probably helped. And pushed for 30 minutes, and then my son was born. So overall, he came out and they laid him on my chest, and I remember he just lifted his head up. He was like, or, you know, in the way newborns do, not super coordinated, but he was so alert. Like, I could not believe it. And so it was such a positive thing at that point. They had to stitch me up, and they gave me local. I remember not feeling like the local helped a whole lot. I felt a lot, but, you know, there was a baby on my chest at that point, and I just, like, everything changes, and it was wonderful. And at that point, it was, like, immediate that I was like, okay, like, that was painful, but, like, worth it, and here he is. And so that was the labor and delivery of my first son.